This is BBC World News. I'm James Reynolds. Our top stories. In Italy, the coronavirus kills nearly 800 people in a single day, the highest total anywhere in the world since the outbreak began. In Spain, there's been a big rise as well, an increase of more than 300 dead, bringing the total number of fatalities there to more than 1,300. As the death toll rises here in the UK, a plea from the Prime Minister for everyone to stay at home to protect health services and lives. India launches a 14-hour-a-day curfew to limit the spread of the coronavirus. So far, there have been 4 deaths and over 300 people have contracted the disease. Italy's Prime Minister, Giuseppe Conte, has announced a new set of lockdown measures which edge closer to shutting down the entire country. More than 4,800 people have now died in Italy, and the numbers are on the rise. Spain is also in a race against time to create more space to treat the ill. Freya Cole reports. La gente che non molla siamo noi. La gente che non molla siamo noi. La gente che non molla.
They're the delivery drivers working in Lombardy, Italy's worst-hit region. Rallying his colleagues, the worker belts out a tune, encouraging them to keep going. Day by day, Italy's lockdown is growing more severe. In the Lombardy region alone, exercising outside has been banned. The use of vending machines, forbidden. And for the rest of the country, the Prime Minister has ordered all non-essential factories and businesses to close.
Rallentiamo il motore produttivo del paese.
We're slowing down the country's productive engine, but we're not stopping it. It is not an easy decision, but a decision that allows us to face the most acute phase of the contagion.
Ad affrontare la fase più acuta del contagio.
It's not yet clear what factories will shut, but supermarkets, pharmacies, post offices and banks will remain open. Public transport will continue to run. But the strict new measures will span across all of the country as a desperate attempt to slow the spread of the disease. On Saturday alone, Italy recorded nearly 800 coronavirus deaths.
I believe we have now taken all the measures that we're able to take before effectively shutting down the entire country. But I ask myself, how would we live? And how would we be able to sustain ourselves if we're no longer able to shop for food? And if supplies are not able to make it to our supermarkets?
Spain is also in a race to save lives. Authorities in Madrid are working frantically to build a makeshift hospital inside a large exhibition centre. Already, intensive care units are struggling to cope. More beds are needed, and they're needed fast. Around the world, more than 300,000 people have tested positive for the virus. Scientists are developing and testing possible vaccines, but as it stands, there is no cure, and it's putting every health system under immense strain. Freya Cole, BBC News.
Well, here in the UK, Boris Johnson has issued a fresh warning that coronavirus will overwhelm the NHS unless everyone starts to practice social distancing. And that the UK, he said, was no more than 3 weeks behind Italy when it came to the spread of the disease. Mr Johnson has urged everyone in the UK to follow official guidance to stay at home to save lives. The death toll here has now risen to 233. Here's Dominic Hughes.
Tonight, a stark warning from the Prime Minister. The NHS is at real risk of being overwhelmed by the coronavirus. Boris Johnson warns we are just 2 or 3 weeks behind Italy and the virus is accelerating. But some good news too in what looks like a really significant deal with private hospitals. 8,000 beds, 1,200 ventilators and thousands of staff will be made available at cost to the NHS.
This is fantastic news. It will really help me and my colleagues on the front line to feel supported and to have the capacity in the hospital to admit the sickest patients to give them the care we need. My only concern about this is PPE, visors, masks, gowns. We know that we've had some shortages in the NHS recently, And I would like to see some assurances that the new staff who are coming on board are going to be protected and that there's going to be PPE enough for all of us to use.
Medical staff are still extremely concerned over access to adequate protective clothing. The government says enough of the right kit is available. Meanwhile, on the first day of what is meant to be something close to lockdown and strict social distancing, in the centre of Newcastle, some people were still out and about. From the experts, though, a real sense that a moment of crisis is fast approaching.
If you follow the advice, you are saving somebody's life. This is the time in your lifetime whereby your action will save somebody's life. It's as simple and as stark as that.
A picture of those who are being admitted to critical care units after falling ill to the virus has begun to emerge. Data was collected on 196 patients in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. More than half of them were being looked after by hospitals in London. There's a significant difference between women and men. More than 2/3 were male, and 132 patients needed a ventilation machine to help them breathe. 16 patients sadly died. 17 were able to be discharged to regular hospital wards. The rest remained in intensive care. There is now real concern about the number of cases that are presenting in London, but also a small but significant cluster in Birmingham and the West Midlands. But the truth is, this virus is spreading throughout the country. Here in Salford, the deaths of 2 patients were announced yesterday. Later this week, 1.5 million vulnerable people, including some cancer patients and those with lung conditions, will receive a letter. It will strongly advise them to stay indoors for the next 12 weeks from Monday to shield themselves from the virus, all part of the effort to ensure the NHS is not overwhelmed in the months ahead. Dominic Hughes, BBC News.
Well, as we've heard, the Prime Minister has urged people to follow the advice on social distancing. Our political correspondent Nick Eardley says that the government wants people to take the warning seriously.
The message from Number 10 tonight is still stark. The Prime Minister telling the country that the UK at the moment is just 2 or 3 weeks behind Italy, urging everyone to follow that advice, saying without a huge national effort to try and stop the spread of this virus, the NHS here could well be overwhelmed. In the next few days, the government will urge 1.5 million people in England alone to stay at home for 12 weeks to protect themselves from the virus. The list of who they think is the most vulnerable will be published soon. It has, as I say, been a really extraordinary period in British political history. The Prime Minister saying tonight that people should stay at home and help save literally thousands of lives.
Nick Eardley. Well, let's look at other countries now. Over 50 Cuban doctors and nurses are to help medical teams in northern Italy. The group will work alongside Chinese doctors in a new hospital with the most number of coronavirus victims. In Cuba itself, the government says it has around 20 confirmed cases and will close its borders for a month from early next week. The French health minister has appealed to the public to hand over protective masks so that they can be used by health workers as hospitals in the country face more and more cases of coronavirus. The minister said there is no need to wear masks while shopping. Health workers in France have criticised supply shortages. Turkey has imposed a curfew for its older citizens and banned restaurants from serving at tables, as the death toll from the coronavirus more than doubled from 9 to 21 in just 24 hours. The number of confirmed cases is fast approaching 1,000. The police have been patrolling the streets of Madagascar's capital after the authorities banned the opening of all public places, places of worship, schools and universities in the region. Madagascar's president declared a state of public health emergency following confirmation of 3 cases of the virus in the country. In the United States, a number of states have ordered shutdowns, with 1 in 5 Americans soon set to be under a stay-at-home order. The virus has so far claimed almost 280 lives and infected more than 19,000 people. President Trump says the US has agreed new measures with the leaders of Canada and Mexico to control non-essential travel across the country's northern and southern borders.
We've also reached agreements with Canada and Mexico on new travel rules at our northern and southern borders to halt the entry of the Chinese virus while continuing trade and commerce. And we've had very good talks with Prime Minister Trudeau, and today, this morning, with President Lopez Obrador. We talked about joint measures that we're taking to prevent the spread of the virus in our countries and to temporarily suspend non-essential travel. We had a great conversation this morning, President of Mexico, and our close cooperation with Mexico and Canada will keep our people healthy, keep their people healthy, keep everybody safe.
Well, our North America correspondent Peter Bowes is in Los Angeles. He told me a lot more about the lockdown there and why the Vice President, Mike Pence, had decided to take a test for the virus.
Mike Pence really has become the face of America's response to coronavirus, leading the task force. We've probably seen more of Mike Pence on the television in the last couple of weeks than we have during the past 3.5 years of the Trump presidency. So he is a key figure involved in this. It was revealed on Friday that a man in his office, had tested positive for the virus. And even though his doctor didn't believe it was necessary for Mike Pence to have the test, he went ahead anyway, along with his wife. And we've just heard in the last hour or so that he has tested negative. And of course, President Trump a few days ago had the test as well, and he was also negative.
You're in Los Angeles, where there is a stay-at-home order. Does stay-at-home actually mean stay at home? Have you been able to tell?
Well, it means stay at home unless you're involved in one of the essential businesses, involved in healthcare, unless you have to go out and buy groceries. And clearly that means most people, you are allowed to go out and buy food. There have been queues outside a number of shops. I was out and about earlier today in Los Angeles and some of the suburbs. And indeed, that is the situation, that people are being made to queue into stores, not because of the crowding, but actually to keep people a safe distance apart. And people are generally using a lot of common sense in that respect and trying to stay apart as they've been advised to do. But what I also noticed was that a number of businesses, and all businesses in California, unless they're essential, should have closed down. A number are still open. I passed a few garages today with people getting tyres fitted on their cars and that kind of thing. And those, it may be essential to get around, but there are certain aspects of work that is being done that I think falls out of the ban on people moving around. So I think most people are adhering to it. Some are kind of bending the rules a little bit.
Peter Bowes in Los Angeles. Well, Australia's Prime Minister has outlined details of a stimulus package to safeguard the country's economy from the effects of the pandemic. Scott Morrison said the government was committed to providing almost $110 billion to support the most vulnerable.
The package of measures, combined with those we've already announced, sums to some $189 billion, or around 10% of the size of our economy. 10% of the size of our economy. That is unprecedented in this country. What we'll be doing, as I said, is focusing on those in the front line, those who will be feeling the first blows of the economic impacts of the coronavirus.
Social distancing measures, of course, mean limited attendance at funerals to only close family members. But one community in the west of Ireland found another way to pay their respects to a grieving family. In West Kerry, people came out to line the 2-kilometre stretch to the cemetery as the hearse passed by, observing social distancing rules. Cases of coronavirus in Ireland have climbed by more than 100 to 785, and 3 people have died of the illness. Stay with us on BBC News, still to come. The traditional Italian song about peace and freedom being played around the world as a show of solidarity for Italy.
Others can deliver food to your door, but can they bring fist bumps and high fives? Can they cause mini stampedes? Bring you instant hero status? Or turn back time with the turn of a knob? Others can bring you food. We bring you a little more. Delivering happy. McDonald's on Uber Eats.
We've been told that perfect mornings exist for the lucky few. That morning people own the waking hours. But the truth is, mornings belong to all of us. And while your morning might look like this, or even this, Your mornings are what you make of them. All it takes is saying yes. Starbucks Morning Yes.
This is BBC World News. The latest headlines. The death toll in Italy has seen another dramatic rise. Nearly 800 people have died in a 24-hour period, the highest total anywhere in the world since the pandemic began. In Spain, there's also been a big rise in the death toll, an increase of more than 300 people, bringing the total number of fatalities to more than 1,300. More than 1 billion people in India are being asked to stay at home to avoid spreading the coronavirus. Reports from Delhi and other big cities say a majority of people are observing the unprecedented 14-hour-long curfew. The BBC's Zubair Ahmed is in Delhi and joins us now. Zubair, how is the curfew going as far as you can tell?
Since 7 in the morning, I have been finding out from people. Of course, I haven't been out, and they say that it is a complete lockdown. The city of Delhi is like a ghost city, and people are observing this self-imposed curfew, which was requested to them by the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in a televised address to the nation on Thursday. And the streets and bazaars and metro stations, railway stations, they all are completely shut down. So people are observing this self-imposed curfew.
Looking ahead at the Indian healthcare system, what kind of state might it be in to deal with a potential increase, dramatic increase in the number of patients?
There has been criticism of the government of India's measure so far. Of course, there have been cases where the government of India has been very proactive in terms of asking people for social distancing, and the state of Rajasthan has announced complete lockdown since this morning. But the healthcare system here is fragile. And the testing is being done only on the people who have developed the coronavirus symptoms and have just come back from abroad. If you have the symptoms and you haven't been abroad, you are not being tested. So that has come in for criticism. The government of India's stand is that it is not spreading in the community. That is why they are not going for big testing right now. But the center of testing is increasing, and there are people who believe that the number could rise dramatically. As we have seen since Friday, the number has really shot up.
Zubair Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us. Well, let's go to Brazil now, because the country's largest state, Sao Paulo, is closing down for 2 weeks from Tuesday to help fight the virus. All non-essential businesses and services, including bars and restaurants, will shut. The state is home to around 46 million people. It's Brazil's business, industrial and financial powerhouse. There are currently more than 1,000 cases of the virus in the country. The BBC's Katie Watson has the latest from Sao Paulo.
The city's on lockdown already, and the big shopping centres have been closed. Only supermarkets and pharmacies are open. Restaurants, summer restaurants are just doing delivery only. You go out in the streets and there are very few people out in the streets. The parks around the city, they're all closed. You can't get access to those. So it feels like certainly Sao Paulo is taking this very seriously. I mean, Sao Paulo has the highest number of confirmed coronavirus cases, being the biggest city. So, and 15 deaths so far. So it is taking this, yes, very seriously, especially looking at what's happening in Europe. I was speaking to one doctor who said that they don't want to make the same mistakes that have happened in Europe, and so they're trying their best, especially with a public health system that many feel will not support the level of cases that they are concerned about getting.
What about travel, given the fact that Sao Paulo has one of the busiest airports in the entire region?
So far, the airports are still working. Certain citizens are not allowed into the country. There are the land borders have closed as well, apart from with Uruguay. So it's still kind of half functioning in that sense. Certainly compared to other parts of the regions, you've got Argentina on total lockdown. You've got Peru, Some of these big countries, you've got Venezuela. So I think, the feeling is, and of course, you've got Bolsonaro, the president, who has, made light of coronavirus in the past. He's very concerned about the economy. So he's trying to not take it too seriously, perhaps, to some of the state authorities, certainly. So there's a bit of a divide there going on in Brazil.
You talked about the economy there. Has the government put in place any measures to protect people who might now be losing their jobs if businesses are told to stay shut?
So there have been lots of announcements. There have been, one of the big concerns is the fact that informal workers account for about 40% of the economy, some estimates. So that's a huge worry. People who are now jobless and have been let go. So for independent workers, so we're talking, street vendors, they've given 200 reais, which is about $40 a month to help them. So we're talking still very low numbers compared to other parts of the world like the UK. That is one of the biggest concerns. How long will this go on? The quarantine here is starting. The kind of semi-lockdown has already started, but yet the numbers that we're seeing in Europe certainly are not here yet. So how long will people be happy to be in lockdown if they're not seeing any changes, or they're not seeing any big concerns? There's an argument that being in quarantine for a long time will also frustrate a lot of people, and that is also a concern here.
Katie Watson in Sao Paulo with the situation in Brazil. Well, elsewhere in the world, Uganda has recorded its first case of coronavirus. All inbound passenger flights and cross-border travel have been suspended. Eritrea and Angola have also reported their first infections. Bolivia is postponing May's presidential election because of a countrywide quarantine which begins on Sunday. The electoral authority said they would suspend the vote for 2 weeks to match the quarantine period, but did not set a new date for the vote. And in neighbouring Peru, the government has ordered the main international airport in Lima to close on Sunday. That's frustrating plans by a number of governments to repatriate hundreds of travellers. Now, it's tulip season in the Netherlands, but this year growers are having to destroy millions of flowers a day as demand has fallen because of the coronavirus. Mountains of blooms that might normally have been destined for a Mother's Day gift are ending up in skips instead. Anna Holligan reports from The Hague.
Inside the world's largest flower auction, the demand for fresh blossoms has been decimated by the pandemic, leaving horticulturalists with the undesirable job of wrecking the source of their own livelihoods.
At the moment, the growers are destroying the flowers at their own nurseries. Maybe 70%, 80% of the total production is being demolished.
The combination of rock-bottom prices and high-quality roses and tulips left on the shelf is, they say, unrivaled in the last century.
The Dutch auction already exists for more than 100 years, and this is the first time that we are in such a crisis.
The growers are now asking the Dutch government to rescue them with an emergency financial package or face ruin within weeks.
A lot of companies, growers and trade companies will go bankrupt, and that will be devastating.
For some, it's already too late. This Mother's Day, the best way for most of us to show our love is by keeping our distance, to protect those in their 60s, 70s and beyond who appear to be more likely to die if they catch the coronavirus. Anna Holligan, BBC News, in The Hague.
The traditional Italian song Bella Ciao is being played around the world as a sign of solidarity for everyone living in Italy. Our reporter Sylvia Lennon-Pence takes a look at some of the videos which are being shared on social media to lift spirits in a time of need.
The virtual curtains open, and guided by their conductor in the middle screen, members of the Serbian National Theatre perform for their virtual audience from the safety of their own homes. It's hoped the video will remind people of the great tragedy in Italy and encourage people to stay indoors. The traditional Italian folk song Bella Ciao is being played from rooftops across Italy to boost morale. The tune dates back to the late 19th century and was sung to protest harsh working conditions in rice paddies in northern Italy. Today, the hardships are of a different kind. Another rendition of Bella Ciao, but this time from a small community in Germany. The group took to balconies as a show of support for Italians, knowing they too could be forced to live under more restrictions. It's the first time the neighbours have performed together, but given the amount of fun, perhaps not the last. Sylvia Lennon-Spence, BBC News.
Not bad for a debut. You can reach me on Twitter. I'm at James BBC News. Please do stay with us.
What does an Artlist subscription cover? Well, everything.
Do you cover broadcast commercials?
We cover everything.
But now I have 50,000 subscribers.
Awesome. Still covered.
But what if...
Everything.
Wait, and if I'm filming a show?
Everything.
But my channel views?
Everything.
Wow. Cool.
One price, one simple license. We've got you covered. For everything. Start now and get your license.